If you're a plumber or friend in the trades, you've come to the right place. Today we're going to be talking about compliance. Is it legal for your AI at your plumbing company to call a customer? That's a lot more complicated than you might think. And today we are joined here with a specialist named John Henson, who is an attorney and the founder of Henson Legal. You can Google that and his law firm will pop right up. He has written an excellent legal circular explaining these issues. And the question I'm going to ask John when we go through this is, how much sleep should we as operators, should you as a plumbing company owner lose worrying about whether your AI is calling somebody or whether you're texting somebody in a way that doesn't comply with the law? Well, there is a national expert at the table today to answer these questions. John, welcome.
Thanks, Paul. I'm glad to be here.
John, you have founded a firm in 2025 specializing in what's called TCPA and TCPA compliance, and you have substantial legal experience. You were formerly the acting general counsel of a little company called Lending Tree, and prior to that, you guided several national brands through the labyrinth, the maze of the Telephone Consumer Privacy Act, the TCPA. And this is a body of law that basically tells mortals who are not lawyers what they may and may not do in texting, calling, and communicating with customers. We're not going to get into, unless you would like to, the state issues, because in addition to the federal law, there are all these hundreds of individual state laws. But I would love it if you could set up this conversation, because I invited you to the table today because I have, on behalf of our clients, been sourcing the latest in speed to lead technologies. So some of these great best of breed technologies out there like Broccoli and Hatch and Avoca. And if a plumbing company or a trade company today isn't using them, they sure will be soon, because you're going to fall behind and not be competitive, and you'll be losing customers if you do not have a way of answering how do you get to your leads first. But when I sat down with all these great vendors, I would ask them, so is it legal for the AI to make a phone call? And at that point, and I'm imagining this is what a lot of the people in the audience experience, the vendors would have basically, I don't know, that's for others to decide. And that's you, John. So help us understand, set it up for us. How much sleep should a plumber lose over texting and AI? And start by telling us what the TCPA even is.
And I would say that how much sleep to lose, I think that this is the area that we can do well. It can be done correctly, it can be done compliantly, and it's not overly burdensome to do so. But there are some risks there, and those risks start with the TCPA, as you said. So the TCPA has essentially two buckets, right? So we have the regulated technology bucket, which talks about what technology you're using to contact the customer, and then what is required to do so. Then the other bucket is the do not call bucket. And we're mostly probably all fairly familiar with that, but there are some nuances in there as well. So let's talk about the regulated technology bucket first. Under the TCPA, you have to have prior express consent to use automated telephone dialing system, which we've all called auto dialers in the past, or the use of pre-recorded or artificial voice. And in 2024, the FCC, which is the governing body over the TCPA, came out and said pre-recorded or artificial voice is going to encompass artificial intelligence generated voice, so AI generated voice. So if you're using AI generated voice, all the requirements in the TCPA and the regulations around the TCPA that apply to pre-recorded or artificial voice will apply to AI voice. And that is an area that people miss a lot, because they think, oh, I'm just going to go put this AI dialer in my CRM and it's going to be fine. Well, not necessarily. So what are the requirements to use this regulated technology? Well, for as we said, it's prior express consent, but that only applies to informational calls, right? So an informational call is a call not trying to sell you something, right? And we're going to talk a lot about that, I'm sure. The other area is marketing calls, right? So a marketing call is I'm trying to sell you something. That requires prior express written consent, right? And so that is a different, stricter level of consent than prior express consent.
So can I jump in here a minute,
Yeah,
John?
sure.
So what I'm encountering in various conversations is, let's use a real world example of the Yelp request to quote feature and the many types of autoresponders that are out there. What I am often encountering are folks that are saying, well, because a user has accepted Yelp's terms, and I'll just, I shared the sentence that I pulled from their terms and conditions. Yelp, in its terms, says, by accessing or using the service, you consent to receive communications from other users and Yelp through the service or through any other means, such as emails, push notifications, text messages, and phone calls. So I think the devil is in the detail. If a user has accepted that at the back end when they signed up for Yelp, under what you're sharing with me, are we covered? Is that the express written consent?
So that's a great question. So arguably it's express consent. Probably you have a good argument for that, because there's a lot of case law out there that says anytime a consumer gives you their phone number is essentially express consent. But that does not mean it's prior express written consent, right? So what does that mean practically? And let's use the Yelp example. So I filled out a form on Yelp just a minute ago, just so I could go through the process. I click, I need a plumber, I need toilet unclogged or whatever, and it says put in your email address, and at the bottom of the screen it says you agree to our terms and our privacy policy. Okay, fine, accept. Then it asks for your phone number, and then it says message and data rates may apply, or something incredibly similar to that. When you click on that, that is giving express consent to be contacted. Okay. Now, there's a lot of things that come into play there. And part of it is the DNC, like we talked about, right? So, in case I called that, now let's say that I called that customer and said, hey, this is John's Plumbing. You want to be John's Plumbing and Electric, and you want to be called about you have a clogged toilet. Is that correct? Yes. Okay. That would allow me to do that manually, even if that number is on the DNC list, because that's an inquiry. Okay.
Do not call list, correct?
The do not call list. Sorry. Yep, the do not call list. If it's because it's a inquiry into my plumbing services, right? Now, is that sufficient for the use of AI voice or another automated technology? I would argue no, it's not, because that's not necessarily an informational call. You're trying to sell your plumbing services to that customer, and you don't have prior express written consent. And the difference there is the prior express written consent is the consumer agreeing to receive a call that is an advertisement or telemarketing services that identifies the seller. We have not identified any seller at that point, right? We've just said, I'm going to call, that someone's going to call you. And when I looked at the list, yes, in fairness, I selected a company at the beginning of the flow, right? I have no idea who it was. It was the first one, right? I would argue that's not express consent for that company to call. Express written consent for that company to call. At best, it's Yelp, consent for Yelp to call. At best.
Let me clarify. So typically in a Yelp request to quote, the plumbing company will identify themselves. Thank you for calling John's Plumbing. What's the best number to reach you on? and then the user will give a number. Is that sufficient to generate a callback from a human and then later for AI?
For an inbound calling, getting a number to come back. Yes, I would say, as long as it's regarding the same transaction, right? So
they can't be called for insurance services if they were there for plumbing services.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. So you can see how this becomes an issue in lead generation, right? Because you have companies like LendingTree, right? That they have lots of different verticals. They have lots of different companies that could be calling. So we have to make sure we identify those parties correctly.
Okay, so that's telling, because if in a multi-trade operation, if somebody called in to fix a toilet, they have not consented to hear about upgrading their panel.
Correct.
And right. That is a guideline. Okay.
I'll give you an example. There was a case last year. Paul, when you're as old as we are, the years just run together. So it was either last year or the year before, but within the last, let's say, 18 months. And customer buys a car from Lexus of Manhattan. And so they bought their Lexus from Lexus of Manhattan. Lexus of Manhattan goes out of business. Their sister company is New York Honda, okay? Owned by the same parent. New York Honda calls the customer and says, customer, don't forget to come in on service on your Lexus at New York Honda. We're running a special off, oil changes or whatever. And the customer sued. And New York Honda was like, look, this isn't even a marketing call, because these are our customers. This other company doesn't exist anymore. And the court said affiliated businesses can at times use each other's list if the customer would understand that affiliate is going to call them. In this case, guy bought a Lexus from a Lexus dealership. He had a service at a Lexus dealership. He drives a Lexus. He had no idea a Honda company was going to call him, right? You can see how that plays out in the home services space, right? If you're Birmingham Plumbing and Birmingham Electric, right? Okay, maybe I realize the same. But if I have a contract for plumbing services with Birmingham Electric, right, and their sister company, Great Southern Windows, calls me, I have no idea why they're calling me, right? So it's very entity specific. And not only that, because as well as I do, a lot of our trade partners in companies have set up multiple divisions and multiple entities. So it's not always as simple as you would think it would be.
So can we back up a little bit? You had mentioned there is a difference between express consent and express written consent. When do you need each?
So express consent is if you're for an informational call. So again, we'll keep using our plumbing example. If you text me and say, John, I'm coming to your appointment, I'll be there in 45 minutes. That's clearly an informational call, right? I mean, we all agree that's informational. If you text me 6 months later and said, it's winter, don't help, call us if you want to winterize your pipes, we're running 20% off, that's clearly marketing, right? Now, we then have situations where you have blended messages, right? Your appointment is scheduled for tomorrow. We'll be there at 10 a.m. Don't forget to ask about our add-on HVAC upgrade, right? That is a blended message. It's informational in the fact that you're telling me you're going to be at the appointment I scheduled, but it's marketing because you're trying to upsell me. So I kind of explain it like this, like at a really kind of stupid level, right? Informational, I'm talking to you about money you've already spent. Marketing, I'm trying to get you to spend more money, right? So anytime you're talking to a customer about money they've spent, right, that is informational, even if you're trying to continue the transaction, right? So, for example, I think the best example of that is like a mortgage, right? So, you've called mortgage person, you've sent them some documentation, and they call you back and they're like, hey, John, to finish your mortgage application, I need bank statements, right? That's informational. That's not marketing. It's just a continuation of that transaction.
But the distinction between express and express written is really where the rubber meets the road. So
it is.
What's an example for the plumber where I've given express consent, but I failed to give express written consent. And
Yeah.
maybe,
So a great one is an inbound call, right? So, hey, John, is this the best number to call you back about this plumbing issue? Yep, it is, right? Best number is 12345. Great. I've given you my phone number. I know you're going to call me back about that particular problem. That's express consent. That does not grant that plumbing company the ability to put me on an email or a text cadence, right? So in 6 months, I get the winterize text. That's not the same thing. That is not the same thing. That winterize text is clearly marketing, and I have not given written consent for that. So your next question is, how do you get that written consent?
yes, sir.
Okay, there's a couple ways. You would have the form, your form filled. You get the consumer's information, and it says some language at the bottom says, "Hey, we may text or call you about promotional services, or your service request at this number." Okay, that is how you get the written consent on a website. If you get it in person, right? One way to do it is after I come you unclog my toilet, I'm going to sign an invoice. You see that a lot. And I have seen companies put that language on the invoice and say, hey, initial here. This just says that, we can use your number to call you for marketing purposes or about this service. Great. And then that is a possible way to do it. I've also had clients go through email, right? So I send you an email and say, hey, we're going to be out there, tomorrow. Please confirm your number so we can contact you about this and other marketing services, blah, blah, blah. Great. Click. That's done too. So there's lots of ways to do it. The main thing is get the written consent and be able to retain that written consent. Other than those two things, the other thing to think through is how do you, and we can talk about this some if you want, is how do you handle when a customer says, don't call me anymore, right? Because that is where a ton of litigation is around. So that's the other areas, is when do you stop calling those customers?
So if we can switch gears, we've been talking more generally about when you can call. When can AI call? So in an example, we've got now the evolution of AI receiving calls, but AI can also make calls. For example, in a missed call situation, which we can get to in a moment about the text back situation. If a customer calls in, the call gets dropped, can an AI pick up the phone and call them back and say, hey, we saw that we missed a call from you. Can I connect you to an agent right now? Is that compliant?
Potentially, you could set it. I mean, I'm not going to say no, but I'm also not going to say yes. The way that is set up is critical. So, for example, missed call, hang up. I would not do that. Missed call, voicemail, thanks for calling John's Plumbing. We'll have someone call you back shortly at 2345. If that's okay, press 1. 1, great. Then that's great. Those are probably the extremes of either one. And Paul, I like to say everything in life is a spectrum, right?
Yes.
But let's say those are the two extremes. There are areas in there that we can slide those either way. But I think that it is possible. It just takes a little bit of thought and messaging to the consumer. And I tell clients this a lot, not just about TCPA or phone compliance, just consumer compliance in general. If you tell the consumer what you're going to do and then do it, that eliminates a lot of compliance problems there. So if we tell the consumer, hey, we missed your call, that's on us. Is it okay if we call you back at this number? Click yes, great. And then you call them back, that's fantastic, right? But you can see using that 2-step rubric there of like, if I call and I just hang up and then I call back, I'm like, why are you calling me? If I wanted to leave a voicemail, I would have, right? So it's definitely a balancing act.
So under what circumstances should plumbers be thinking about using AI to make outbound calls. Is that a thing yet? Is that legal yet?
Yes, it is. I mean, I have clients in various verticals, including home services, doing it. However, when we do it, we set up. I'll say this: the best way to think about it is if you're thinking about all your leads as one giant funnel, that's a problem, and you're gonna run into issues.
Okay.
What I see customers do, and the ones that have good success at it, is there is some sort of categorization they do, whether it's by channel, right? Like these are the customers that came through my website that I control all the language on. And therefore, I feel more comfortable calling these consumers, right? Because I know what they've agreed to. Versus, and we're going to pick on Yelp today, and I'm sorry, but versus, hey, these are the Yelp consumers and I don't love their language. So maybe I don't put them through an AI voice. Maybe I just manually dial those customers, right? So you can see, again, everything being a spectrum, that you pick how you want to bucket those channels and your marketing partners in, and where to bucket those.
Well, you had mentioned Yelp. So in that sentence, in Yelp's terms, in paragraph E, it's only one sentence. It says, by accessing or using the service, you consent to receive calls by others. It doesn't say AI calls. It just says calls.
It doesn't.
So if in the Yelp context, and that is not sufficient to permit an AI to make an outbound call on its own, correct?
I would want my clients to think very long and hard about that. Let's put it that way. I am not Yelp's attorney. I have no connection to Yelp whatsoever, other than we're talking about them. But I don't like that language. I think prior express written consent is clearly defined as what needs to be included in that, and that does not do it.
Written consent in order to get is that relevant to whether it's AI or human? Does it make a difference?
It's AI because AI falls under that regulated technology bucket that we talked about.
Okay.
We have to have prior express written consent to send them marketing messages, either voicemail or text messages, right? So we have to have that if you're going to use AI voice. And again, because we know what is supposed to be included in prior express written consent, that does not include it.
Okay, so that's really helpful. So basically, am I correct to understand that in the Yelp autoresponder flow, if a customer gives up a phone number and when asked from John's Plumbing, what's your phone number, that is sufficient as express consent, not written consent, but express consent for John to make a human phone call, but it is insufficient for an AI to make that call. That's basically the difference. Is that fair?
So I do want to take a step back. So we're going to assume, I think I want to make something very, very clear that I think we've kind of glossed over, and that's 100% my fault. What the TCPA is concerned with is outbound calls. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
So if you're going to use an outbound call to market and use AI voice in an outbound call to market, you have to have the prior express written consent. So if you're getting an inbound lead from Yelp, right? And they call you and say, hey, is this your phone number? Can I call you back? Yes. You should not use AI voice on those people, right? Unless you know that it's going to be purely informational, right? And I would also limit that time frame you used it, right? So
purely informational, John, this is important. Purely informational could be, thanks for calling us for your clogged toilet. Would you like us to come over and fix it for you? That's informational. That's not selling them anything.
That's marketing, because you're trying to sell them. You're trying to sell them your services to come over.
So that is marketing. Okay.
Yes, I would think, because the intent of that is to sell them something. Now, if they're on the phone and they set up an appointment and you call them back the next day and say, hey, remember just confirming your appointment for today, that's informational, right? So you can see how this gets very gray very quickly.
Agreed, and that's why there are professionals like you to advise, to guide people through the maze. Let me ask you, if I may, I'm seeing some technologies out there that are using AI to create a phone bridge. So in Yelp, a number will come through. The number will be captured by voluntarily given by the user. And then the system will generate through automation a phone call to first to the CSRs, the plumbing company, and then ask them, hey, there's somebody that has just come through Yelp. Would you like me to dial them? And to accomplish that, a human being has to press a button in order to initiate the call. That's a human-driven call, arguably, not an AI call. Is that correct? So AI calls human, asks human, do you want me to dial the customer? And human says yes. And they never hear an AI on the other end. That's just human to human, assisted by AI.
So that's an interesting question. And I'll give you another example. There was a lawsuit filed earlier this year against a mortgage company that was using an AI voice, okay, calling customers and saying, hey, now's a great time to refinance. Would you like to talk to somebody? Yes. Immediate transfer to warm human being. And they got sued over the use of AI voice because they didn't have prior express written consent, right? So that's a similar scenario, but it is different because the difference you just described is essentially what is also called power or parallel dialing, right? So like we're going to do a lot of dialing. When somebody picks up, we transfer it to a warm person, a live person. But you're using AI in this place to make those power dials. I think that you do run into some risk there because you're going, not only do you have the AI issue, there's a possibility that that is going to be considered an automated telephone dialing system on the front leg of that, right? So now you've got two legs. You've got the front leg that's dialing all the numbers, and then the second leg is the transfer to a live person. So the reason I brought up that example about the mortgage company is because it's a very similar situation, right? You've got the two legs to that call. You have the AI call that's definitely there, and then you have the handoff to the warm live person. So I do think there is some risk there, and I would like again, really want to understand that process and how it works better before you get comfortable with it.
So in this case, it isn't multiple dials waiting to connect. It is it's the AI calling the office, getting a dedicated person, and then saying, would you like me to dial this customer for you? And the person presses yes.
So person inbounds to
no, so
whoever.
So person goes to request a quote through a messaging platform.
Okay.
Voluntarily gives their number and with the expectation of receiving a phone call.
Okay.
Technology loads that phone number up into a dialer, now calls the plumbing company, gets a human being on the phone, and says, there's somebody waiting to speak to you. Would you like me to dial them for you? And the plumbing company speaks then directly with a human to the user that came in. AI never spoke or made itself known in that chain other than to carry out the dialing the phone just like speed dial would.
Yeah. So I think depending on the language on the form, that probably could work, right? Because the consumer is raising their hand and saying, this is the number I need to be called at. I want to talk to somebody. And essentially, what I'm hearing you say, then the AI goes out and finds the plumber and says, hey, call this person, they're ready to talk to you, right?
Correct. And then it provides a speed dial convenience to the plumber so that he doesn't actually have to dial the number.
So one of the things that jumps out at me though there is when I say the language, like I mean that consent language, and kind of goes back to our Lexus and Honda conversation of like, does the consumer expect to be called by that person, right? Is that plumber either the name on the consent language or one of the names on the consent language in a multi-lead scenario, right? So that is one of the ways you can do that.
Okay, so that it does sound like that would pass the test, but the question is, where would the consent, where is the consent? Because that part of the challenge of the law is, how is a business supposed to get to this consent from a new customer who's just reached out and contacted them? They don't have any prior contact with them, so where would they have?
Wherever they raised their hand and said, call me at this number, there should be consent language on there, right? Saying, hey, I know I'm going to get phone calls at this number by phone calls from somebody, right?
Okay.
And we want to make sure that somebody lists our plumber.
Okay. So basically, if within the platform message, you said something as simply as, we're going to, what's the best number to reach you on so that we may give you a call?
Yep.
That would be sufficient. That would be express written consent.
It would be express consent for sure. I'm not sure about written. I don't think it would again, it depends on what
because they're messaging in the platform.
You have to, like, when you look at this, it's the whole flow, right? So they're messaging in the platform. What does the platform look like? Does it look like a chatbot? Does it?
Yes, it's essentially a message chat, which you'll find in Yelp, Angie, other places.
Yeah. So again, you see on those chats, right? Hey, is this the best number to contact you? Is it okay if one of our partners, including Bob's Plumbing and Electric, call you at this number? Yes. Great. And go from there.
That's helpful. Can we shift gears to texting? Because in a standard workflow with all this great technology that's out there, many plumbing companies will have a text back feature that if somebody calls in, the call drops, they get a text to say, "Hey Paul, sorry that you it's John's Plumbing. Sorry that we missed your call. Is there anything that we can do for you? Shall we book an appointment for you right here?" The question is, where is the consent given in that chain?
Yep. So consumer has come in, called. You didn't, and this kind of the same scenario we talked about earlier. It depends on where we are on that spectrum. If it's just a missed call and you immediately text back and you have no other information other than phone number 1234 called you and you immediately text back 1234, that's a problem. I don't love that.
Where could that consent come from? For example, could it be on the website?
It would be, you could get it over voice, right? Because you don't need marketing consent on that, because I've called in about some sort of inquiry. I'm just texting you back, hey, I saw you called. Somebody will call you about this issue tomorrow or whatever, right? So I consider that a continuing the transaction call, right? Much like the mortgage person asking for additional paperwork. Here, we're kind of early on in the transaction, right? But consumer has raised their hand by inbound to call and hopefully got a voicemail or a message saying, hey, thanks for calling. We see you're at 1234. Is that we'll call you, we'll send you a text shortly. Right? Done. And it should say press 0 to stop. Assuming that happens, right? Then I think that's perfectly reasonable, depending on how that's set up. But yeah, I think that is directionally correct.
Okay. Let's shift gears if we might. How much sleep should we be losing over this? Can we just take our vendor's advice? I'm saying this rhetorically. Who's suing whom for how much, and what are the stakes here?
Yeah, I mean, the issue here, right, is that TCPA has a private right of action.
Okay.
That turns into class actions.
So that means in lay terms, what is a right of action and what's a class action?
A private right of action means I can sue you, plumbing company, for what you did to me. And in a class action, I can sue you and represent everyone else that looks like me that you did this to. And it's up to $1,500 per call. And then in some states, you layer other calls on top of that. I mean, other fines on top of that. But let's just use $1,500 a call. and you've made 1,000 calls last week, and that's 150,000. Excuse me, that's $1.5 million of risk last week, right? And 1,000 calls on AI voice, that is not long. That is about a 6 hour, could be a 6 hour window, right? So it's got some real teeth to it. And that's the reason you see a lot of people really concerned about TCPA compliance. Now, this is an area that people think, oh, well, like, sure, people do sue, but how many times are there lawsuits? Well, it goes up every year. Like it for the last 2 years, it's risen. And I want to say it's like in the thousands of times lawsuits now a year. So this is a real risk about this. The other problem that a lot of people don't recognize is of these thousands of calls, I mean, excuse me, thousands of lawsuits that are filed, about 45% of them, or almost half of them, are filed by someone who has filed a TCPA lawsuit before. So these are people that know what they're doing. They're repeat litigators, right? And it's like their side job or full-time job to do these lawsuits.
Yeah, in a previous era, there were the fax litigants, people who would sue for junk faxes, and then
Yeah.
I actually got a call from as a business from a junk fax lawyer many years ago asking me, could you look through your junk faxes, and would you be interested in engaging in litigation? And that's sort of perhaps the environment today. How many people are actually settling? Do you know, in the home service space? Do you have any anecdotal?
Uh,
Who's
yeah.
who's paying money for this? Getting caught up in it.
Yeah, I think what you're seeing, I think a lot of these do settle. Most of them don't go to trial. The so if I what happens is, right, I say I get a letter from Paul saying Paul's going to sue me because I called him 6 times over the last 2 weeks. It's $1,500 a call, but he could sue me for $9,000, but I'll settle right now for six, right? Or three, right? And you pay $3,000 to make it go away.
Often is
And
that actually happening? How many do you have a feel for that among your clients?
daily,
No, that's what I'm
I mean,
asking. How big?
yeah, seriously. I mean, I have clients that basically once once a week I get an email from a client saying, hey, we either got this demand letter, or we got an email from a customer, or we got named in a lawsuit. What do we do? Right. And that's it's very routine, very standard. Your big industries on it right now are financial services is always a big one. Consumer goods is growing, and then home services is growing as well.
Okay. John, would you tell us a little bit about your practice? How do you help clients?
Yeah.
How do people reach you?
Yeah, so I my practice is somewhat unique in the fact that I don't do litigation actually. So like if you get a demand letter, I'll help you with the demand letter. If you get a lawsuit, I refer that out. I don't like doing litigation. I like compliance. I think the compliance is it's more fun because you get to help solve these problems for clients. But I am very active on LinkedIn. You can find me John Henson on LinkedIn. I am the bald one. And then you can also find me at henson-legal.com, which I'm sure we'll have a link in the show notes or something somewhere on this for
We
us.
will.
And, I help clients not necessarily, I have two buckets of clients, right? So I have my lead generation clients, which are buyers and sellers, right? And or sellers. And then I have a lot of AI voice platform clients. So these are the people that are selling the AI voice products and or companies that want to use those. And it's been a good practice area. It's been really interesting because, as you know, Paul, this moves fast, and there's a lot going on everywhere. And the fact that you cannot have a conversation right now with anyone who's trying to grow their business that AI voice does not come up. So it's been really interesting and really fun. And I'm happy to help any any of our plumbers or trade guys in that or gals in that area and help them understand what's going on and how they can do this effectively.
And I will say, as from the marketing corner, your work is essential because as we are building in these technologies, we are not as marketers equipped to give legal advice, and yet the questions are coming up, and I'm noticing that that vendors don't have an answer, and neither do the marketers, and that's the important role you play. So this has been a great episode, John. We thank you for the great advice and insight, and we look forward to seeing everybody on the next episode of the Plumbing Marketing Success Podcast.